To marry the crown prince. My younger half-sister drugged me with a love potion and sent me to the bed of the 8th prince. My father was enraged and forced me to marry the brutal 8th prince as his concubine. Meanwhile, my younger half-sister took my place and became the crown princess as she had desired. I was strangled to death by the drunken 8th prince. And even my corpse was repeatedly abused by the guards. Seeing my pitiful state, my younger half-sister, dressed in the crimson crown princess's wedding gown, glared at me with a look of malice and triumph. Sister, it's a good thing you're dead. This immense fortune now belongs to me. When I woke up, my younger half-sister was holding that cup of wine, coaxing me to drink it. Chapter 1. When I died, my body was covered in bruises, and my clothes had been torn to shreds by the guards. The beastly prince who strangled me was surrounded by a circle of concubines. On the day I entered the prince's mansion, I vowed to resist at all costs. In the end, I bit his arm, and blood gushed out. He was furious, choking me tightly, his eyes bloodshot. You're just a worthless thing, pretending to be so virtuous. Your older sister, the crown princess, has spoken. She ordered me to teach you a lesson. Soon, I stopped moving and stopped breathing. My eyes were wide open, refusing to close in death. My soul drifted in the air. I watched as the beastly prince casually kicked me off the bed and handed me over to several guards. At least she's the daughter of a grand guardian of the palace. Even in death, she's still a beauty. Take her. The guards dragged me into a side room, tearing my clothes into shreds. Then, my soul left the prince's mansion and drifted into the Jiang mansion. I saw my younger sister trying on a bright red wedding gown. Stunningly beautiful. In the flickering candlelight, the gown was so red it hurt my eyes, reminding me of the pool of blood beneath my lifeless body. Her mother, Madame Zhang, touched the phoenix embroidered on the gown, overjoyed. After all this planning, it's finally done. Shuangwen has lost her virtue, she can never become the crown princess. The imperial edict has already been issued. No matter what, the Jiang family must produce a daughter to become the crown princess. From now on, my daughter Wanro will be the legitimate daughter of the Jiang family. Jiang Wanyu. Fortunately, the Jiang family has only recently moved to the capital and has not yet met the crown prince or the aristocratic families. A fleeting look of cruelty flashed across Jiang Wanru's eyes, and she smiled lightly. Humph. Mother's plan is indeed clever. Even if father refuses to let me become the crown princess, I don't believe he can defy the imperial edict and give up such glory and wealth. As for Jiang Wanyue, she will henceforth be the concubine daughter Jiang Wanyue. I have already informed the prince to properly discipline his new concubine. Mother, rest assured. With Jiang Wanyue's frail constitution, she won't last half a month. Then, Jiang Wanru stroked the exquisite pearls on her embroidered robe, murmuring in admiration, her eyes brimming with triumph. Sister, this unimaginable wealth and honor are finally mine. In a fit of rage, I pulled out my hairpin and stabbed it at them with all my strength. But my soul passed through their bodies without so much as a flicker. The next moment, my soul began to fade away. I wept tears of blood, clenching my teeth in a vow. If there is a next life, I will make them pay for their crimes with their blood. When I opened my eyes again, my younger sister was sitting before me, holding the cup of poisoned wine. In my memory, the brutal 8th prince was choking me with his hands. His obese, greasy body was disgusting, pressing heavily on me. I struggled desperately, but couldn't move an inch. The brutal force on my neck still felt present, and I couldn't breathe from the pain. But the next moment, I was safely sitting in my bedroom at the Jiang mansion. The person in front of me had turned into my younger sister, Jiang Wanru. She held the cup of drugged wine, smiling sweetly. She claimed it was the daughter's red wine she had just brewed, to celebrate my becoming the crown princess. In my previous life, she had used the same pretext to trick me into drinking that cup of wine. And when I woke up again, I was in the 8th prince's arms. At that time, my clothes were completely stripped off, my body covered in red marks and bruises. The next moment, Jiang Wanru's biological mother, Xing Ai, arrived with my father and Jiang Wanru's entourage, kicking open the door. The sight of me and the 8th prince naked was fully exposed to my father. My father was so enraged that he spat out a mouthful of blood, lamenting the misfortune of our family. A flash of cruelty flickered in Jiang Wanru's eyes. She then dragged my father away and whispered something to him. After they returned, I became the concubine Jiang Wanru in my father's eyes. That night, I was bound and taken to the prince's mansion, becoming the 8th prince's concubine. The original concubine Jiang Wanru took my place as the legitimate daughter Jiang Wanyue and was soon to enter the Eastern Palace. Thinking back to the 8th prince's face, covered in scars, as he lay dying, I was still in a panic. In my panic, I screamed and pushed Jiang Wanru away with all my strength. She fell to the ground, and the cup of wine spilled onto the floor. She looked at the spilled wine, her face showing a hint of panic, and a flash of cruelty in her eyes. I was utterly shocked. Looking at my own hands, I suddenly realized that I was no longer a spirit. I had been reborn. Jiang Wanru's eyes darted around, and she climbed to her feet, grabbing my hand. Her eyes were filled with grievance. A tear even welled up in the corner of her eye, and she spoke in a delicate voice. What? Now that you've become the crown princess, you're looking down on your younger sister? This was specially brewed by your younger sister for you. I had planned to give it to you as a wedding gift when you married in the future. But then the imperial edict arrived, and you were so fortunate. I brought it out early to celebrate for you. But if you don't like it, just tell me. Why ruin the wine I worked so hard to brew for you? In my previous life, Jiang Wanru was always good at playing the victim in front of me. She would often come to my courtyard and cling to me every day. I was generous by nature and didn't mind such things. Therefore, in the Jiang mansion, whatever good food or fine clothes Jiang Wanru wanted, I didn't mind sharing with her. But I never imagined that beneath her delicate and fragile exterior, she harbored such an evil and cruel heart. Jiang Wanru, and your own mother, Shang Shi. In this life, I will not let you off the hook. I looked at her, smiling coldly, and spoke in an icy tone. My dear sister, then why don't you explain yourself? What should I do to not waste this cup of wine? Upon hearing this, she froze, not expecting me to be so cold toward her. A flash of coldness crossed her eyes, but her face was filled with innocence. Sister just wanted you to taste this cup of daughter's red wine. Before she could finish, I gripped her hand tightly, feigning emotion. If that's the case, bring another cup. I'll drink it all in one go. Of course. I didn't drink it. As soon as Jiang Wanru brought another cup of wine, I dismissed the servants. The next moment, I picked up the wine cup and poured every drop into Jiang Wanru's mouth. In the past, I was the fish and meat, and others were the knives and chopping blocks. Now, it's time for a change. Jiang Wanru's face turned pale. She tried to vomit but couldn't. She panicked and tried to run out. I grabbed her wrist tightly, stared at her, and spoke calmly. What's the matter? The wine I gave you, Wanru's sister. You can't drink it? Don't worry, Jiang Wanru. Once you drink this cup of wine, you won't be able to leave this door. I watched as Jiang Wanru's eyes shifted from panic to a dazed, unfocused gaze. Her breathing grew increasingly rapid, and her face flushed with heat. I smiled slightly, my eyes filled with hatred and coldness. Jiang Wanru, I will definitely kill you. But before I do, I will make you suffer every torment I have endured. I won't let you die easily. I summoned my trusted maid Xiao Tong and whispered a few words to her. Then I lay down on the bed, waiting for the show to begin. When the door was kicked open, I closed my eyes and pretended to be resting. Jing Shi's shrill voice pierced my eardrums. Master, even if Wan Yu is as foolish as she is, she couldn't possibly do something so shameful to the family at this critical moment. You say she and the 8th prince have already consummated their relationship. Where does that leave the Jiang family and the crown prince's palace? A young lady who has just come of age. Losing her virtue like this, how could she be so disrespectful? But the next moment, her voice abruptly stopped. Because on my bed, there was no 8th prince lying there like a dead pig. My father's hand, which had been raised high, dropped limply. I pretended to be awakened by the commotion and sat up. Looking at the crowd before me, I frowned, my expression displeased. Father and Aunt Sheng, accompanied by maids and servants, barged into your daughter's bedroom. Those who didn't know what was happening must have thought something terrible had occurred. Aunt Sheng, you're so flustered. Talking nonsense. You've brought shame upon the Jiang family. Could it be that my mother has been ill for too long? And you've forgotten that the mistress of the Jiang mansion is my mother? Aunt Sheng hadn't expected me, who usually spoke softly, to be so sharp-tongued. She was speechless, her face turning pale. The next moment, she put on a fawning expression and pretended to apologize to me. But her eyes darted around the room, searching. I knew she was looking for the 8th prince. What a pity. Zhang Shi, your carefully laid plans today will surely come to naught. A mocking smile curled the corners of my lips. I stared at her intently and spoke without mercy. Aunt Sheng, what are you looking at? Looking at you like that. Could it be that you think there's some wild man hiding in my room? She denied it repeatedly. She said she heard from the maids that the 8th prince had gotten drunk and come to my room to bully me. I laughed so hard it sounded like I'd heard the funniest joke ever. The next moment, a young maid rushed in, kneeling on the ground. She stammered, Master Zheng and Lady Zheng, hurry to the adjacent room. The second young miss. She's with the 8th prince. Upon hearing this, Mrs. Zheng's expression changed drastically. She looked at me and finally realized something was wrong. She shot me a quick glance and stormed out the door. I quickly put on my outer robe, grabbed my father's sleeve, and motioned for everyone to follow her. Such a great show, how could anyone miss it? As soon as we arrived at the side room, we saw Jiang Wanru in the 8th prince's arms, engaged in a passionate embrace. Jiang Wanru's pink belly band was still in the prince's plump mouth. My father's face turned green. Madame Zheng screamed. She couldn't believe her eyes and rushed forward to pull Jiang Wanru and the prince apart. Then she threw her outer robe over Jiang Wanru's naked body. The red marks on Jiang Wanru's neck stood out starkly against her snow-white skin. She hugged Jiang Wanru and wailed loudly. She then glared at me with anger, her eyes flashing with malice. My father stepped forward and slapped Jiang Wanru hard across the face. Jiang Wanru's lips were instantly covered in blood, and she gradually came to her senses. She looked at herself, naked except for the outer robe. Then she looked at the prince on the bed, who looked like a fat pig. She instantly realized who the main character of today's scene was. It was her, not me. She stared at me with uncontrollable anger in her eyes. Then, with tears filling her eyes, a weak and pitiful voice came. Father and mother, your daughter must have been framed by someone with malicious intent. The wine I drank was given to me by my elder sister. Before she could finish, I interrupted. What are you saying? Sister? How could I have given you the wine? It was clearly you who came to my room and asked me to taste the daughter's red wine you brewed yourself. I didn't catch it. And the wine spilled. You insisted on getting me another cup. After waiting for a while, I fell asleep because I was tired. When I woke up, you were here with the 8th prince. Then, I pretended to be heartbroken and wiped away tears. My foolish younger sister, even if you're so infatuated with the 8th prince, you shouldn't treat yourself this way. You've just come of age, and you've already lost your virtue. If this gets out, people will think our Jiang family has such a shameless reputation. I deliberately raised my voice on the last 4 words. My father, who heard the words shameless, turned pale. He then grabbed Jiang Wanru, intending to slap her again. Just then, the 8th prince woke up. Seeing the two of them, a smile appeared on my lips. I immediately stopped my father and spoke softly. Father, the 8th prince is watching. Perhaps my sister has already harbored feelings for him. Now that we've discovered this, why not go with the flow and bring them together? It's not just for my sister's reputation, but also for the Jiang family's good name. You've been an official for so many years, you've never been the subject of gossip. Now that this has happened, why not secure a title of concubine for my sister? Seeing my father deep in thought, I smiled broadly. But a chill crept into my heart. My father had served as an official for many years. And in his heart, reputation was everything. Yes, he would never allow anyone to do anything that would tarnish his reputation. In my previous life, I had knelt before him for a long time. My eyes were filled with tears as I begged him not to marry me off to the prince's mansion. He still cruelly tied me up and stuffed me into the prince's small palanquin. If he could treat his own legitimate daughter like this, what about the daughter of a concubine? As for the 8th prince, in my previous life, Aunt Xing took advantage of his visit to my father to secretly tamper with his food. Before he left, she gave him a poisoned drink. Then she dismissed the maids outside my room and had the servants lead the 8th prince to my chamber. But this time, the one lying in his arms was Jiang Wanru. The 8th prince adored beauties, his mansion was filled with countless stunning young women. Faced with an official's daughter being offered to him on a silver platter, he would never refuse. Sure enough, as soon as my words fell, the 8th prince hurriedly spoke. My prince's mansion is vast and prosperous, I can certainly afford to keep a concubine. After all, I am a man. Minister Jiang, rest assured that I will never let my woman suffer. Seeing my father remain silent, a hint of impatience flashed in the 8th prince's eyes. The fleshy flesh on his face twitched up and down. What is it? Minister Jiang, do you not trust me? I immediately pulled my father's hand and gave him a look. I hinted to him not to offend the 8th prince. Just like in my previous life, my father finally nodded. Jiang Wanru naturally cried, made a scene, and tried to hang herself. But she was closely watched by her father's men and couldn't do anything. My father would not tolerate even the slightest mistake. Zhang Shi, the concubine, panicked and knelt on the ground, refusing to get up. She cried with snot and tears, begging my father to spare Jiang Wanru. She said that the 8th prince was a ruthless man who would devour his victims whole. Her daughter had married into his family, how could her delicate frame endure such treatment? But the door to my father's study remained firmly shut. Outside, it was pouring rain, and she was soaked to the bone. I walked over slowly, pretending to be kind and offering her an umbrella. Then I leaned down gently and whispered in her ear. What are you saying, Auntie? How could your sister not endure it? I saw that day when your sister and the 8th prince were in bed, weren't they quite happy? I gave her a big smile and then left with the umbrella. She trembled with anger after hearing my words. She glared at me fiercely and fainted on the spot. I took a cup of wine and went to the thatched hut where Jiang Wanyu was being held. I handed a bag of silver to the guards outside, and they immediately opened the door. 2 servants followed me inside. The door creaked open, revealing Jiang Wanru, bound and gagged. I closed the door, tore the cloth from her mouth, and stared at her intently. She looked at the wine in my hand, and a look of terror flashed in her eyes. I took a handkerchief, gently wiped away the tears on her face, and sighed. "Ah, little sister, you've always caused me so much worry since you were a child. Now you've gotten yourself into such a mess. The 8th prince's mansion is no place for a human being. Look, your sister feels so sorry for you that I specially brought you a gift. Drink this, and you'll be free from your suffering." It was a cup of poisoned wine. Shuangwen naturally knew what it was. She stared at me with wide eyes but said nothing. I set down the poisoned wine and left immediately. I had originally planned to kill her outright, but there were 2 guards following me. My father had ordered that she must never be out of the guard's sight at any time. However, even if Shuangwen didn't drink the poisoned wine, she wouldn't survive more than a few days in the prince's mansion. By then, I could act in secret, and it wouldn't be too late. But the next day, the guards in the mansion rushed in to report, "Master and Miss, something terrible has happened. The second young miss is missing." That day, a stable hand was missing from the courtyard. When my father and I arrived, the guards outside the room were already lying on the ground. My father discovered they had drunk wine laced with a sleeping potion. The poisoned wine I had given Shuangwen was still sitting neatly on the table. I felt a surge of anger. I blamed myself for not being more ruthless and simply slitting Shuangwen's throat with a knife. My father was speechless with anger. After all, he was so noble. Yet his own daughter disobeyed him and fled. My father and I went to the Xing family's villa and asked her where Shuangwen had gone. But she only pretended not to know and eventually feigned fainting. My father could only leave helplessly. He then ordered the servants to investigate thoroughly and find out Shuangwen's whereabouts. He was busy with state affairs and had little time to keep watch. Thus, the responsibility fell on me. I focused my investigation on the stable hand and searched his servants' quarters. In the corner under the bed, I found a perfume pouch. The pouch was embroidered with 2 mandarin ducks, and beside them was a blue butterfly. At a glance, I knew it was definitely embroidered by Shuangwen herself. In all of Shuangwen's embroidery, she always included a blue butterfly. Sure enough, there was also a handkerchief inside, embroidered with the words Shuangwen. Holding the handkerchief, I couldn't believe it. Even such a private item as a perfume pouch and handkerchief had been entrusted to the stable hand. The stable hand had gone to such great lengths, even risking his life to save her. Their relationship was far from that of a master and servant. Could it be that the 2 of them had already become involved? Could Shuangwen have fallen for a stable hand from the mansion? I ordered the servants to find the stable hand's indenture contract, which recorded his address before he came to the Jiang mansion. When the servants went to investigate, they found that the address had been completely demolished. The trail had gone cold again. I sent servants to investigate further, even going as far as the 8th prince's mansion. But the 8th prince made it clear, if he wanted someone, he would have come to the Jiang mansion directly. Why go through such trouble? He also ordered us to hand over the person immediately. He accused the Jiang mansion of breaking its word and behaving disgracefully. After searching for over half a month, there was still no sign of Shuangwen. I dared not relax my vigilance and ordered some servants to closely monitor Jingshi. I told them that if she contacted anyone, they must report it to me immediately. Looking at the imperial red wedding gown bestowed by the palace, I made up my mind. This life, everything I have, I must hold firmly in my own hands. I will never hand everything over to Shuangwen and her mother. And I swear, I will make them pay the price they deserve. The spies from the Jiang mansion go out early and return late every day. Yet there is still no news. Shuangwen's escape must have had Zhang's assistance. But who is behind this? Whose hands are so long? Not only can they reach into the Jiang mansion, but they can also snatch Shuangwen, a living person. right under the noses of the guards. Even now, there is no trace of her. Shangsher is the daughter of a county magistrate. She couldn't possibly have such powerful connections. I thought about it for a long time, but I couldn't come up with any answers. Until one day, I went out to buy spices to make calming incense for my mother. On the way back, I casually lifted the curtain of the carriage and saw a familiar figure. Jiang Wanru? When we were in the Jiang mansion, she always liked to stick close to me. Every time my father received a reward, he would give it to me and my mother first, and I would share everything I had with her. So, after living together in the mansion for so many years, I was very familiar with her figure. I knew it had to be her. I hurriedly had the carriage follow behind. But the next moment, her figure disappeared into the Spring Phoenix Pavilion. The Spring Phoenix Pavilion was a renowned brothel in the capital. As an unmarried woman, I couldn't go there directly. I found a few trusted servants. I had them disguise themselves as wealthy merchants and go to the Spring Phoenix Pavilion. Yes, the Spring Phoenix Pavilion only accommodates wealthy and powerful nobles. It can be said to be a private retreat tailored for the wealthy and powerful elite of the capital. The women here not only have exquisite figures but are also skilled in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. In terms of demeanor, they possess 3 parts of arrogance and 5 parts of melancholy. It is truly hitting the mark. The Spring Phoenix Pavilion has perfectly capitalized on the nobleman's idealized vision of a red-haired confidant. Therefore, here, whatever you desire, you are sure to find a woman who meets your heart's desire. Could it be that Jiang Wanru, to escape the 8th prince, has willingly fallen into a life of prostitution? Those few confidants followed my instructions and described her appearance to the madam, believing they would see Jiang Wanru. But in the end, they only saw several women who resembled her in appearance. And Jiang Wanru has yet to appear. I sent dozens of servants to stake out Chun Feng Lu. But after several days, we still found nothing. And next month is the day of my marriage to Crown Prince Li Xian. According to tradition, the palace maids have already arrived at the mansion to teach me the palace etiquette. So I decided to focus on the wedding for now. But a few days later, a ragged old beggar came to the gates of the Jiang mansion. He said that despite the Jiang family's wealth, they were secretly engaged in such shameful deeds. He accused us of abducting a young girl and demanded we return her daughter. When the servants relayed the message, I was with my aunt learning palace etiquette. My father had gone out to meet with colleagues, and my mother was still ill in bed. Upon hearing the news, I hurriedly apologized to my aunt and asked her to wait a moment. I then instructed the servants to bring the beggar inside. His clothes were in tatters, and from prolonged starvation, he was skin and bones. A pang of sympathy welled up in my heart. I ordered Xiao Tong to bring a plate of pastries and a few dishes, telling him to eat first and then speak. But when he saw the roast duck on the table, he only swallowed hard. Then he turned and stared straight at me, begging us to return his daughter. I was puzzled, but I couldn't help feeling annoyed. I told him to explain in detail when the Jiang family had kidnapped his daughter. After hearing his story, he became so enraged that his entire body trembled. But after staring at me for a while, he bowed his head and knelt down, his voice trembling with tears. Miss Jiang, I know you are from a wealthy family. You have no lack of food or clothing, and you wear fine clothes every day. I beg you, out of kindness, please return my daughter to me. We are peasants from the countryside. We've only been in the capital for a short time, lost our money, and have been begging to survive. But even begging, I would never do something as despicable as selling my daughter. Not long ago, Miss Jiang took my 9-year-old daughter with several servants and threw a bag of silver at me. She said my daughter was born to be a servant, and being taken by a wealthy family was her good fortune. You snatched my daughter away in an empty alley, If I hadn't followed you through several streets and heard the servants call you Miss Jiang, I wouldn't have known who had kidnapped my daughter. Miss Jiang, please. I'm willing to be your slave, just please release my daughter. Who hasn't even turned 10 yet? Upon hearing this, I was utterly shocked, and a chill ran down my spine. When had I ever done such a despicable thing as kidnapping someone in broad daylight? This man kept insisting that the woman was Miss Jiang. But in the entire capital, there was only one prominent family surnamed Jiang, ours. Could it be Jiang Wanru? But why would she kidnap an innocent girl not even 10 years old? I squinted my eyes, fixed my gaze on the beggar before me, and spoke softly. Old man, are you certain that the Jiang miss you're talking about is me? After hearing this, he seemed to want to say something. He paused for a moment before speaking slowly. To be honest, I did not see the woman's face clearly. She was wearing a veil and dressed in luxurious clothing, clearly from a noble family. The servants referred to her as Jiang Miss. I have inquired extensively, and among the Jiang family, only your household is prominent. That is why I came here. Now that I think about it, the woman and Miss Jiang do share a certain resemblance in their eyebrows and eyes. Miss Jiang, I beg you, please release my daughter. Do not torment me any further. Upon hearing this, I was certain that the woman who had kidnapped my daughter was Jiang Wanru, because Jiang Wanru and I are half-sisters. Our eyes are exactly like our father's. I looked at the bag of silver coins the old beggar handed me. The patterns on them were clearly imperial. I calmed the beggar down and had Xiao Tong prepare a clean servant's room for him. I told him I would do my best to find his daughter and to rest assured for now. Then, I called over a few servants and whispered a few words to them. Jiang Wanru, you fox. You've been hiding for so long, it's time to show your true colors. If I ever meet you again, I won't spare your life. When I saw the fourth Prince Li Jing at the inn, I was enjoying the inn's new dish, white jade frosted pastries. The fourth prince is the eldest son of the crown prince, with his mother being the cloud concubine of the palace. The crown prince is now the sixth prince, with his mother being the empress. Looking at his elegant and dashing appearance, I felt a wave of nausea. 8 words came to mind. Golden on the outside, rotten on the inside. As he sat down, I spoke directly. Who would have thought that the esteemed fourth prince would have such a peculiar fondness for young girls? Humph. The fourth prince picked up a piece of lotus seed pastry and was about to put it in his mouth. Upon hearing my words, he froze in place. I smiled, my eyes flashing with coldness and contempt. What? The fourth prince does such a thing and doesn't even allow others to speak of it? He hadn't expected me to be so blunt. He was choked by the pastry in his mouth and coughed for a while. The servants behind him hurriedly poured him water and patted his back. After a long time, he finally regained his usual composure. He pretended to be calm, refusing to admit it, and even bit me. Miss Jiang, you're just making things up. Do you have any evidence? I know you're about to move into the Eastern Palace. Just because you're about to become the Crown Prince's fiancé, does that give you the right to slander me? Spreading rumors and defaming the royal family's reputation is a serious crime. I smiled, seeing his stubbornness, and clapped my hands. Several young girls suddenly entered the private room of the inn. They were still innocent and childlike, but they wore revealing sheer garments and heavy makeup, creating an incongruous sight. Upon seeing the fourth prince, they all trembled in fear. The fourth Prince Li Jing pretended to be calm, but his eyes betrayed his panic. I motioned for 2 of the girls to come over and gently brushed the sheer fabric off their backs. On their backs were 2 words clearly tattooed. Wen Ji. These were the 4 Prince Li Jing's secret characters. He stared at me with wide eyes, a hint of surprise flashing in his gaze. But he quickly regained his composure and refused to admit it. Wen Ji. I have no idea who Wen Ji is. As the crown princess, You dare to resort to such underhanded tactics. You randomly picked a few women to frame me in broad daylight. I will immediately report this to the emperor. We'll see if you can keep your position as crown princess then. Hearing this, I didn't expect the fourth prince to deny it so vehemently. I clapped my hands and laughed. Indeed, he was a prince who had seen many storms in his life. Even seeing his own handwriting, he could still deny it. I waved my hand, and my men immediately protected the girls and retreated. Then, I narrowed my eyes and stared intently at the fourth prince, seeing a hint of tension in his eyebrows. I curved my lips into a smile. Fourth prince, since you said you would go to your father, you must admit it. Let's go to the palace together and see how your father handles this. What do you say? Upon hearing this, the fourth prince's face turned pale in an instant, and he stammered, You wicked woman. How did you find them? How did they end up in your hands? I stood up, looking at the fourth prince who was pretending to be calm, and said indifferently, Fourth prince, you're overreacting. My methods aren't even a tenth as effective as my younger sister Jiangwanru's. As for how they ended up in my hands and how I found out, when she is your fourth prince, you must have forgotten that I am the future crown princess. The crown prince is my future husband. Yes. I sought help from Crown Prince Li Xian, my future husband. That day, I saw the royal family's exclusive emblem on the bag of silver coins the old beggar was holding. I knew then that Jiang Wanru must have been secretly involved with a prince. Otherwise, the servants wouldn't have searched for so long and found nothing. And the power behind Jiang Wanru must be immense. That's why she could hide for so long without being discovered. After hearing the old beggar's words, I recalled seeing Jiang Wanru enter the Spring Phoenix Pavilion earlier. I deduced that Jiang Wanru was the one who had kidnapped the young girl. The Spring Phoenix Pavilion could fulfill every desire of the wealthy and powerful, even the most despicable of preferences. Therefore, Jiang Wanru must have learned from the Spring Phoenix Pavilion that the fourth prince has a preference for young girls. And she hooked up with him. She brought various young girls to the fourth prince and trained them to be exactly what he wanted. In return, the fourth prince protected her. It was a perfect deal. Unfortunately, what goes around comes around. Such inhumane crimes are clearly against heaven and cannot be tolerated by law. Seeing my serious expression, the fourth prince knew I wasn't joking. He waved his hand and agreed to my request. He even told me he would send his concubine's daughter, Jiang Wanru, to my mansion. As I watched him about to leave, I stopped him and spoke firmly. Release those young girls. He clenched his teeth, a flash of cruelty crossing his face. Seeing the martial artists from the Jiang household standing outside the door, he nodded. Jiang Wanyu, you're ruthless. Those young girls, I will release them from my private residence. But before he could return Jiang Wanru, the crown prince had already gone missing. When I heard the news, I was embroidering a pouch for Crown Prince Li Xian. That day, I had asked him for help, and he had agreed readily. As he was leaving, I noticed that the thread on his waist pouch had come loose. I asked him to take it off so I could sew it for him and bring it to the Eastern Palace another day. He laughed heartily, his voice as clear as mountain spring water. Since Miss Jiang is so considerate, why not sew a pouch for me? To have Miss Jiang embroider it personally, I am truly fortunate. At that moment, I blushed instantly. Before he could leave, I held his pouch in my hands and ran out immediately. I thought about my conversation with Crown Prince Li Xian that day, my expression dazed. The next moment, a sharp pain pricked my fingertip, and I snapped back to reality. A drop of blood the size of a bean fell from my hand. It stained the pouch, and I felt a sense of foreboding. The crown prince must not come to harm. I put down the pouch and my mind raced. Today was the autumn hunt. and the crown prince and the other princes were accompanying the emperor. In previous years, the autumn hunt had taken place at the Malong hunting grounds. But this year the emperor was unwell. Therefore, the hunt was held at the Nanhai suburb, the closest location to the palace. Yesterday, I had just met with the fourth prince. Today, something has happened to the crown prince. Could it be that the fourth prince broke his word? To avoid handing over those young girls, he sacrificed the crown prince? The emperor has few heirs. Apart from the eldest prince who died in infancy, the second prince, and several princesses, only 3 princes remain. The fourth prince Li Jing, the sixth prince crown prince Li Xian, and the ninth prince Li Ku. However, the ninth prince is still an infant in swaddling clothes. After much deliberation, I finally came up with a plan. I called Xiao Tong and quickly sent a secret letter to the palace. Then, she and I rushed to the palace gate. At the palace gate, the eunuch Yu Qing, who was by the empress's side, arrived as expected. When she saw the empress, her eyes were red, as if she had been crying for a long time. Upon seeing me, she immediately gripped my hand tightly, her face haggard. Yes, I knew she was anxious. As the biological mother of the crown prince, the future heir to the throne whom she had raised with such effort had suddenly disappeared. If I were her, I might have gone mad. I looked at her and knelt down directly. I told her about my request to see the crown prince for his help and about my meeting with the fourth prince. After hearing this, she shook her head and helped me up. She looked at me, and 2 tears fell down her gaunt cheeks. She wiped away her tears and spoke softly. My child, it's not your fault. You must never think that because Xian helped you, the fourth prince targeted him because of you. The fourth prince Li Jing has always been treacherous and cowardly. You've been in the palace for a short time and don't understand his true nature. Even if this hadn't happened, the fourth prince would never have spared Xianer. If anyone is to blame, it's Xianer for being too kind-hearted, always believing that his fourth brother was still the good older brother who once shielded him from a sword. But people change as they grow older. Which prince doesn't desire the throne? After all, it's the greatest power in the world. It's all my fault. I should have eliminated Li Jing long ago. Otherwise, my Xianer wouldn't have ended up like this. I saw her weeping uncontrollably, on the verge of fainting. My heart felt like it was being crushed by a boulder, making it hard to breathe. Suppressing the pain within me, I leaned down and whispered a few words into her ear. Soon, news spread throughout the palace that the crown prince had gone missing, and the emperor had fallen gravely ill. Soon after, the emperor began coughing up blood repeatedly, his life hanging by a thread. That night, an urgent summons was issued, and the fourth prince, Li Jing, quickly entered the palace. The emperor was on his deathbed. He grabbed Li Jing's hand, mistaking him for Crown Prince Li Xian. He then handed Li Jing an imperial edict, ordering him to ascend the throne immediately. Li Jing was overjoyed. But upon opening the imperial edict, he discovered that the crown prince mentioned inside was still Li Xian. He finally realized that the emperor had mistaken him for Li Xian when he called him the crown prince. Looking at the sickly emperor, he no longer hid his true feelings. He took the imperial edict and threw it into the fire pit. The emperor was stunned and sat up abruptly. He finally realized that the person before him was not Crown Prince Li Xian. It was clearly the fourth prince, Li Jing. He suddenly remembered that his beloved son, Li Xian, had gone missing a few days earlier. The emperor glared at Li Jing and slammed his fist on the bed frame. You ungrateful son! This is an imperial edict written in my own hand. How dare you destroy it? Do you know that burning an imperial edict and disobeying the emperor's orders is a capital offense? The fourth prince looked at the emperor, who was nothing but a pile of bones, and tore off his mask. Father, my sixth brother is still unconscious. No one can find him except me. However, father, let's make a deal. I suggest that you immediately change the imperial edict and appoint me as the crown prince. Otherwise, father, you will never see your beloved sixth brother again. The emperor coughed up a mouthful of blood, collapsed to the ground, and pointed at Li Jing with disbelief. It was you! You actually harmed your own brother for the throne, intending to kill your sixth brother. You have such a cruel heart. Cough cough. The fourth Prince Li Jing burst into laughter, looking mad. Ha 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 ha. Father, your words are inaccurate. For the throne, I not only intend to kill my sixth brother, but also you. Father, if you refuse to appoint me as crown prince, the knife in my hand will not recognize you as my father. As he drew the knife from his sleeve and slowly approached the emperor. Hiding behind the screen, I nodded to the elite guards beside me. With a thunderous palm strike, he knocked the dagger out of Li Jing's hand. They subdued the fourth Prince Li Jing. The next moment, the emperor's previously sickly expression vanished. Instead, he looked vibrant and healthy. I supported the empress and led the elite palace guards out from behind the screen. Li Jing looked at us, then at his father, and instantly understood. This was a play we had all staged together. He had thought he was in control, but in reality, he was the one playing the fool. I looked at the emperor and empress and knelt down to kowtow. This humble servant thanks the emperor and empress for their magnanimity. If it weren't for the emperor's wisdom and willingness to risk his life to expose Li Jing, he would never have shown his true colors today. The emperor laughed heartily, nodded at the empress, and said in a clear voice, "Indeed, the empress has good judgment in choosing such a good daughter-in-law for me. If you want to praise me, you should praise the empress instead. After all, she persuaded me for half a day before I agreed to put on this show. Indeed, one must enter the tiger's den to catch the tiger's cub. Bring him here. Subject Li Jing to 72 tortures. I won't believe he can't be made to talk. Indeed, no one knows a son better than his father." After 3 tortures, Li Jing could no longer endure the pain. Soon, he confessed everything. It turned out that the fourth Prince Li Jing had long resolved to eliminate Li Xian. He had once tried to form a faction, bribe officials, and slander Li Xian. However, as the future heir to the throne, Li Xian not only possessed the aura of a king but also acted with flawless precision. No matter how hard they tried to frame him, they could find no loopholes. In the end, Li Jing resolved to eliminate Crown Prince Li Xian. His original plan was to act during the autumn hunt. Even if I hadn't threatened him to hand over Jiang Wanru and release those young girls, Li Xian couldn't have escaped the traps Li Jing had secretly set during the autumn hunt. Li Jing had already made preparations on the horse Li Xian frequently rode. He ordered men to insert several needles into the horse's hooves, which were coated with anesthetic. At first, the horse would not feel anything. However, if Li Xian rode the horse for hunting, it would soon become restless and gallop wildly. As for the guards stationed nearby, they were supposedly royal guards tasked with protecting the prince, but they had already been replaced by Li Jing's secret guards. They planned that once the horse acted up, they would pretend to rescue Li Xian and then knock him unconscious in the forest. They would then secretly dress him in a guard's clothes and transport him to the private residence outside the fourth prince's palace under cover of darkness. After all, if Li Xian were to die, the emperor did not favor the fourth prince and might even choose the infant ninth prince as heir. He knew the emperor favored Li Xian. That was why he spared Li Xian's life, intending to use him as leverage against the emperor. Would the emperor choose the life of his beloved son or allow Li Jing to become crown prince? In exchange, he would certainly spare Li Xian's life. After hearing the palace attendant's report, the emperor looked at Li Jing's blood-stained letter and the hiding place of the crown prince, then snorted coldly. "Dare to threaten me? Your life is as good as over. Go find Xian immediately." Once you find him, demote Li Jing to a commoner and execute him on the spot. When Li Xian returned to the palace, a grand banquet was held for 3 days. Yes, Li Xian was the emperor's most beloved son, not only because his abilities far surpassed those of the fourth prince, but also because he had a kind heart. More importantly, the emperor had long known that the fourth prince, Li Jing, had ulterior motives. As a father, he still had a basic love for Li Jing. However, when it came to the fate of the empire, he had to choose a benevolent ruler, and Li Jing had long been erased from his heart. If he had remained content, the emperor would have allowed him to live out his days as a leisurely prince, happy and carefree. But if he dared to covet what did not belong to him, even risking the life of the future heir to the throne, then his own life would be over. The returning crown prince Li Xian had not changed much. He was just a bit thinner, with a small scar on his face. Since we had not yet married, we did not sit together at the banquet. Across the crowd, he raised his cup and looked at me from afar, giving me a gentle smile. I knew he was expressing his gratitude to me. I took a handkerchief and covered my mouth, smiling softly. Then I took the pouch from my sleeve and waved it gently in my hand. He saw it and his eyes widened in surprise. The next moment, I put the pouch back in my sleeve. Seeing his anxious expression, I pretended to be calm and continued drinking. I ignored him, but my heart was stirred by the ripple he had caused. After the palace banquet ended, I went to the prince's outer courtyard, because that's where Jiang Wanru was being held. When the fourth prince Li Jing's family was raided, the emperor was furious. Not only were there letters implicating him in collusion with several ministers, but there was also irrefutable evidence of his plot with the eighth prince to ally with the Xiongnu and betray the country. The eighth prince was executed on the spot, and all his family's assets were confiscated. In Li Jing's mansion, there were also over 20 young girls hidden away. When they were discovered, they were all hidden in the cellar, and the one in charge of them was none other than Jiang Wanru. The crown prince knew that this was all Jiang Wanru's doing and not the Jiang family's orders. Therefore, to prevent the emperor from taking his anger out on the Jiang family, he kept Jiang Wanru's involvement a secret from me and allowed me to handle her as I saw fit. All the young girls were properly taken care of. Those with parents were reunited with them. Those without parents were temporarily housed in the crown prince's estate. They would work as maids, serving tea and water, and receive a monthly allowance. The daughter of the old beggar was among them. Seeing the father and daughter kneeling to express their gratitude, I quickly pulled them up. I then ordered the servants to give them some silver as compensation. After arranging for the young girls, Jiang Wanru was bound and sent to the dungeon beneath the prince's private residence. At that moment, I was wearing a vibrant palace robe, my face radiant with joy, holding various torture instruments in my hands. I stood before Jiang Wanru. A palace attendant poured a basin of icy water over her, and Jiang Wanru, who had been asleep, jolted awake. Seeing me, she looked at me with a terrified expression. Amidst the terror, a fleeting glimpse of hatred flashed across her eyes. I looked at her, exhaled deeply, and spoke with a sense of satisfaction. Jiang Wanru, I have some earth-shattering news to share with you today. Your own mother, Zhang Shi, has dirty hands. She secretly poisoned my bowl, intending to harm the future crown princess. Tell me, how could your father bear it? He was about to expel her from the mansion, but I quickly stopped him. Look at him. He's so kind-hearted. Your own mother was trying to poison the crown prince's future wife. This is a capital offense. However, she did serve your father. Even if she didn't have any merits, she at least had some hardships. Don't you agree, Jiang Wanru? I put down the whip and picked up a bone-carving knife. Looking at her, I smiled mockingly. Her face turned pale, and she shouted at me, demanding to know what I had done to her mother. Seeing her so anxious, I slapped her across the face. A trickle of blood appeared at the corner of her mouth. I finally spoke slowly. Indeed, she is the daughter of Jingshi, who has such shallow eyes. She knows no manners. Shouting and screaming, what a disgrace. Speaking of the Jing family, they've never been trouble-free. I must find someone to properly discipline her. After all, death may be forgiven, but punishment must follow. What do you think? There's an alley outside the palace where eunuchs gather. I saw an old eunuch who's so old yet still can't find a wife. He's truly pitiful. I watched her eyes widen in fear, and felt a sense of satisfaction. I continued, I'm a kind-hearted person, so I gave your mother to him. He was so grateful to me at the time, promising to treat your mother well. Of course he would. When he was in the palace, he was famous for being cruel and perverted. Your mother falling into his hands. I'm sure she'll be well taken care of. Unfortunately, after just a few days, your mother couldn't endure that eunuch and was beaten to death. I'm sure you must have missed Jingshi terribly. That's why I brought your mother back. I then opened the wooden box beside me, revealing Jingshi's head inside. Jiang Wanru fainted on the spot. But after a few buckets of icy water, she quickly came to. Looking at me, her eyes were bloodshot, her face twisted, and her gaze was filled with venom. Jiang Wanyu, I wish I could kill you. From a young age, you had everything. You didn't have to lift a finger to get what I had to work so hard for. I refused to accept it. Back then, I should have just killed you with a single blow. Looking at her gritting her teeth, I found it amusing. I casually tossed Shang's head to the nearby wolf dog. I looked at her, laughed a few times, then spoke softly. Too bad. You won't get the chance. But you're quite clever. Using the stable hand who secretly loved you. You went to great lengths to have the guards pass messages to him. And he risked his life to save you. Buying sleeping potion and knocking everyone unconscious. Look at how devoted he is to you. Why would you betray him like this? She looked at me as if she had seen a ghost, shaking her head in disbelief. I looked at her, gripped her chin tightly, and smiled. Sigh. You're such an ungrateful person. You despise him. But how could you be so cruel as to sell him to the Nanfeng Pavilion, where he was subjected to various forms of humiliation by men? When it comes to cruelty, I can't compare to you. But fortunately, I arrived just in time to save her when she was being humiliated by those men. My dear sister, what do you think he'll do to you if he sees you again? Jiang Wanru immediately burst into tears, begging me to save her no matter what. She was willing to be a cow or a horse to repay me. She just begged me to spare her and not let her fall into the hands of that stable hand. Seeing her like that, if she hadn't been bound by ropes, she would have immediately knelt down and kowtowed to me. As if hearing the funniest joke in the world, I clapped my hands. With a creak, someone pushed the door open. He was covered in scars, emaciated, and had clearly suffered greatly. His leg had been broken, leaving him lame. He was the stable hand. The stable hand looked at the bound Jiang Wanru with eyes that seemed to spit fire. He knelt before me, bowing his head, expressing his eternal gratitude for saving his life. And he vowed to treat Jiang Wanru well to prove his loyalty to me. I nodded in satisfaction. Then I placed the dagger in his hand, closed the door, and left slowly. Behind me, Jiang Wanru's piercing screams for mercy echoed. Soon, I married the crown prince. I entered the Eastern Palace and became the crown princess. The empress of all. Crown Prince Li Xian was a good man. He had a gentle and kind nature, as smooth as jade. He was also highly skilled in both military strategy and martial arts, particularly adept at archery and horseback riding. Though our marriage was arranged by imperial decree, he treated me with great kindness. He not only showed me ample respect but also showered me with care and affection. In his spare time, he taught me how to ride horses and shoot arrows. Seeing that I could ride a horse and hit a flying goose in just 7 days, the look in his eyes toward me was filled with respect, admiration, and a touch of love. Our days together were not overly sweet, but we treated each other with respect and affection. As we spent more time together, our relationship grew increasingly close. Every time he finished court, he would rush straight to the Eastern Palace to share the interesting stories from court with me. The look in his eyes when he looked at me was filled with even more love. I too slowly fell in love with this husband who treated me so well. At this point, I was already 2 months pregnant. The crown prince had finished his breakfast and told me to rest well while he went to court first. Watching his departing figure, I was filled with joy. Gently caressing my belly, my eyes were filled with anticipation for the new life within me. At that moment, a palace attendant came to report that someone was seeking an audience. Hearing the familiar name, a smile appeared on my lips, and I immediately had him brought in. It was the stable hand. After several months apart, the stable hand had grown much stronger. Upon seeing me, he immediately knelt down and bowed his head, then brought forward a box. Inside was Shuangwen, her body chopped into a pulp. He said he had subjected her to every torture he had ever experienced, and the humiliation he had endured at the South Wind Pavilion that day, he had inflicted upon Shuangwen in full. Shuangwen had endured it for several months. In the end, there wasn't a single piece of good flesh left on her body before she finally breathed her last. I looked at the wooden box stained with blood, covered my mouth with a handkerchief, and ordered the palace attendants to open it before quickly taking it away. Pregnant and filled with worry, I couldn't bear to see the blood. Every day, palace attendants reported on Shuangwen's condition to me. Every moment she spent under the stable hand's care was utterly miserable. When it came to punishing Shuangwen, the stable hand dared not show any mercy. He was furious, gripping me tightly, his eyes bloodshot. I looked at the wooden box beside me, feeling a sense of relief, then turned to the stable hand and said, "You did well, you did not disappoint me. This is your reward. From now on, live a good life." The stable hand's eyes welled up with tears. Then he took the gold and knelt down to express his gratitude. Watching his receding figure, I said to the palace attendant, "The filthy things in that wooden box, take them to feed the dogs." The palace attendant left, and as I watched the vicious dogs devour it, I smiled broadly. Then I picked up the embroidery in my hands and began to sew several sets of nightgowns for the crown prince. Looking at the mandarin ducks playing in the water on the fabric, I laughed heartily. My embroidery skills are truly improving day by day. End of the story.